much tonight, so be careful.
Are you ready to stop riding the emotional elevator of life? Are you ready to learn how to elevate your emotions that keep you psychologically traumatized or in an addictive behavior? You are in the right place. Here is your host, Sandee Byrd, trauma, addiction, life, and spiritual coach of the Emotional Elevator Show.
Well, welcome everyone. I have the privilege and honor tonight to be interviewing Dr. Sarah Whittree tonight on my show. Of course, I keep forgetting I am Sandee Byrd. I am the host here of the Emotional Elevator. You are, of course, listening to me on Inspired Choices Network, but you probably are watching us on either Facebook or any other live platform out there. And if you are, like and subscribe. But this is going to be a very exciting conversation tonight. It's an expiring episode, and I'm just going to start diving in. Of course, Sarah is going to give out all of her tags and everything like that because I am the host, Sandee Byrd. Of course, you can reach out to me at Sandee Byrd with those two E's, BYRD coach at gmail.com. But tonight is not about me. This is about Sarah Whittree, Dr. Sarah Whittree. So let me just dive right on in this tonight. In this inspiring episode of the Emotional Elevator, we're joined by Dr. Sarah Whittree, a hospice and palliative medicine physician turned transformational coach for physician moms. Sarah shares her passion for helping women reconnect with their true selves by aligning their daily lives with their core values and desired emotional states. Together, we dive deep into why emotions are powerful guides for creating a fulfilling and intentional life and how understanding them could lead to greater clarity and purpose. Dr. Sarah Whittree offers practical strategies to help you identify your unique values, uncover what truly matters most, and design habits and routines that reflect your authentic self. We also explore how her work in hospice care has profoundly shaped her approach to life and the mission behind her coaching practice. If you've ever felt disconnected, overwhelmed, unsure of how to create a life that feels aligned and meaningful, this episode is a must listen. But let me tell you a little bit about who she is first. Probably should have started there. She, of course, as you've already heard, is a hospice and palliative care physician, a wife, and a mother of four. That alone is a lot. So, on top of that, she's helping other women. That's what's amazing. After navigating infertility, adoption, anxiety, and burnout as a physician mom, she's passionate about empowering other professional moms to reclaim their time, energy, and joy. Through her work with Vibrant Humans, Sarah helps women redefine what it means to be a good mom, a professional, set healthy boundaries, and prioritize their values as they live a more vibrant, balanced life. You can, of course, reach her at vibranthumansarahwhittree.com. Welcome, Dr. Sarah Whittree.
Thank you so much, Sandee, for that kind introduction. I appreciate it, and I'm excited to be with you tonight.
Okay, well, we are going to just dive into all of this. Tell us
Yeah.
about who you are, how you
Mhm.
got into all this, and how you just now want to help other women change their lives.
Sure, sure. So, as most people, right, we have kind of long, winding stories that bring us to the place that we are now at in our lives. And I believe pretty wholeheartedly that, our journeys are ever evolving, right? And so I can kind of speak to the elements and the pieces of my journey that I feel like have brought me to where I currently am in my life in this season. And I think that for a lot of my life, I have been very invested and very interested in psychology and personal growth and all sorts of things related to that. And while that was always operating in the background as like part of my personality, going through life and going to college and to medical school and residency training and fellowship training, like that occupied a lot of the time in my life. Um, so navigating kind of professional career and becoming a physician, as well as, concurrently alongside starting to want to build a family, get married, start to have children, all of that, uh, I found to be more challenging than I would have imagined, right? And yeah, because of some of the experiences that I've had, like going through infertility, becoming a foster mom, becoming an adoptive mom, biologic mom, just like growing my family in a way that I would never have ever possibly imagined or anticipated. I felt like I had to navigate a lot of emotional challenges, and kind of personal and professional challenges. And just kind of, through that process and those years of my life, in addition to really having like a reckoning of kind of professional crisis, I would say, during the pandemic, all of those things, in a relatively short period of time, like in a few years' time, I feel like really inspired me to kind of take my own personal growth to a deeper level, and really understand a lot more about myself and kind of, what makes life and everything meaningful to me. And then that journey has inspired me to do the same for other women that I see alongside of me, who are in various stages of their growth, and their professions. But, a lot of people I work with are in the medical field or the healthcare system, and just trying to help them to navigate, right? So all of the challenges and all of the understanding their own emotions on a deeper level, and just kind of how powerful that's been for me, and for people that I work with. Because, I think there's just these threads that weave through life, that really determine kind of the how we feel on a day-to-day basis, and also just kind of like the vibrancy, the quality of life that we live.
Wow. Just hearing you talk about, having the psychology part in your brain and then going through and becoming a doctor while also having psychology in the probably pit of your stomach, but
Mm-hmm.
then now becoming a multi-parent, as I like
Mm-hmm.
to say, because not only did you have your own children, you have adoptive children.
Mm-hmm.
And then life takes a turn for you, COVID.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all this came about when COVID hit, right? How were you able to decide to make this your path through all that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, where did this, like, you went, you know what? I'm doing this for myself, but I want to help other people do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there were a lot of little like breadcrumbs that I saw along the way, right? That kind of nudged me internally, like, this is something you really care about. Like, I'm really passionate about this, and there were a lot of different ways that showed up with conversations I would have with colleagues and friends and coworkers. And then I think for a while I didn't believe in myself that I was able to kind of have any sort of like significant impact on other people, right? But the more that I shared my story, the more like vulnerable that I would be about some of my struggles, and the things that were helping me. I found that like deeply resonated with a lot of people that, hadn't been able to really speak about their experiences or their struggles. And the more I shared and was able to offer, pearls of wisdom or little advice, or even just like simple strategies that I was using, I found that like I got a lot of positive feedback, and people being like, that thing you told me about, that thing we talked about was so helpful. Like, and then they'd want to know more, and so it's just kind of started out really organically like that. And then I remember being at, a a really awesome conference. It was like a women's physician wellness conference. It was a couple of years ago. It was in Aruba, so it was a great location. Um, and it was all about prioritizing wellness in the medical profession for women, and it was really inspiring, like a lot of amazing speakers and everything. And I think that I realized at that conference that, that stuff was all stuff I was so passionate about. And the transformations I was getting, right, and having in my personal life that translated into my professional life and just kind of my whole life. I remember that being pretty monumental experience in a sense, because I kind of said out loud to a lot of people there, like, I'm going to become a coach too. Like, it's on my path. I have to do it, and I want to coach other women in healthcare as well. And yeah, kind of started out that way and have evolved a lot. But that's like a moment that I can remember that stands out.
Wow. So, how do you balance and juggle all of this with
Career,
being a
mom.
doctor, being a
Yeah.
mom, and now a coach? How do you balance?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'd say it's definitely not a one and done thing. That's what's one thing I've learned, is that like finding balance and finding a sense of harmony, I would say, between work, home life, personal life, right, is really for me been a process that ebbs and flows, and that I have to come back to pretty darn frequently to reassess. And so I think there's a lot of skills in kind of crafting a life that feels very um, not just sustainable, but like full and vibrant and all of those things, right? Um, there's a lot of elements and skills that go into kind of crafting that and developing that. I think for me, had to learn a lot about um, myself, my own values, what really matters to me, right? We call those like core values. And then really how that translates, like once you know those things, like how that translates into how you prioritize your time, how you prioritize your schedule, what you say yes to, what you say no to, and being um pretty firm on some of those boundaries that you have to set, right? And so that's also been a process and a learning, is just being like, some of it has looked like, cutting back clinically, like initially. And so it's been a lot of like baby steps and micro adjustments and kind of a trial and error. And I'd say it's still ongoing. Like, as far as like, I haven't made a perfect formula, but I have a really sustainable formula that I feel overall good in, right? And just like
Mhm.
how the ways that I spend my time, and having really clearly defined kind of energetic boundaries, I would say, for myself. Like when I, so a lot of it has been about cultivating like presence. So when I am here, I just want to be here, right? And like work on like the mind and the thoughts and the emotions behind that. Being able to be present, be connected with what's going on here and now, right? And not like thinking about my to-do list for later, or thinking about what I didn't get done yesterday, or you know what I mean? Because it can be really easy to kind of spiral that way when you've got so many kind of balls in the air, and different things that are playing into your roles and responsibilities and all that. So I think it's a lot of practices of those things and skills that I've worked on developing to be able to say, like, okay, here's when I map out my week, right? Like, here's the time I'm going to spend with family. Here's the time I'm going to spend at work, coaching, this and this, and then trying it out, see how it goes, and then coming back to it. And I honestly do like a weekly audit, like on Sundays, to kind of say, like, what am I going to do this week? What's my focus this week? What do I need more of? And oftentimes it's stuff for like my my own like replenishing time, or like connections for me, right? Like that energizes me to be able to do the work that I want to, as a coach, as a doctor, as a parent, as a spouse, like all those other roles. I really, really have to be diligent about the time I take for myself, for sure.
So, we're going to go on a break in a minute, but everything you do, you still carve out time for yourself.
Hmm.
And that is something when we come back to the break, I want to dive into, because as women, and I'm going to say this as women and mothers, a lot of us were taught everyone comes first. So
Hmm.
we don't take that time for ourselves. So we're going to go on a break, but when we come back, I do want you to dive into what does it look like for you to take time for yourself? And how do you take time for yourself considering everything that you have going on in your life? Because I think that also I know is what you teach other women
Mhm.
and how to carve that out.
Mhm.
But Sarah, how can anyone reach out to you, get in contact with you if there's other physicians listening to me, or even women who sit there and go, wow, her life sounds like mine. And because will you help, will you coach anyone, or are you more specific to physicians?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I've expanded to definitely like women in healthcare. So a lot of like nurses or pharmacists or, physician assistants, people that are working in healthcare. But I'm happy to talk with people, and offer tips. I have a pretty active like LinkedIn account, Instagram account. If you search my name, or I can give the links to you, for the direct ways to get in touch with me. And I also have a podcast that you can listen to. It's called Vibrant Human. So those are like easy ways to, yeah, hear more of kind of tips, strategies, and kind of behind the scenes of my life and how it's still ongoing in terms of figuring out, what is balance for me and how do I maintain that sense of who I am and what's important to me, how I make that time for myself.
Okay. So what is your, I know what they are, but I want them to know, how can they look you up on LinkedIn? How can they look you up on Instagram?
Okay, my Instagram handle is at Sarah with an H, ANNEWITTRY. And then on LinkedIn, if you just search my name, Sarah Witchery, I should come up there. Those are, yeah, pretty the easiest ways I have. I also have a Facebook group that you can search. It's Vibrant Humans if you want to request to join that too.
Okay. Well, we are going to go on that first break. Of course, you are listening to me, Sandy Bird, on the Emotional Elevator on Inspired Choices Network. And I have the amazing privilege tonight to interview Dr. Sarah Witchery. But we are going to go on that break. And when we come back, she's going to dive in how she takes time for herself with that busy schedule and how important it is for her to take time for herself. So let's get to that break.
Are you living a life of psychological trauma or suffering from an addiction? Are you
Can
ready
they
to
still see
learn
us?
new techniques to elevate your emotions without sustaining or obtaining them from substances that are not good for your mind or body? Then continue to tune into Emotional Elevator with trauma, addiction, life, and spiritual coach, Sandee Byrd, where you will learn techniques to elevate your emotions that don't require a magic pill, food, or impulsive behavior. Listen to Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific, on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd. To participate in this program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. You can also send an email to sandy@emotionalelevator.com. Now, back to the program.
Well, welcome back, everyone. I am, of course, Sandee Byrd here on Emotional Elevator on the Inspired Choices Network, and I have the privilege and to have a conversation, an amazing conversation with Dr. Sarah Witchery, who is the Vibrant Human. She, like we started out, she is a doctor who also coaches other women in the medical profession who live these lives that have children, spouses, and how they can care for themselves so that they're not burning out. So, before we went to the break, she talked about how she takes time for herself. And I want to dive into that because if you didn't listen to the first part, please go back and listen because I want you to hear all that she does. So I want to know because, as I stated before the break, as women, sometimes we are conditioned to put everyone in front of us. And I want to hear how she does take time for herself and how she values that and how that could be, I'm unsure, part of her core values is to make sure she is taking care of herself. So let's just dive back into this, Sarah, Dr. Sarah Witry.
Okay, you can call me Sarah. Okay. Yeah. So, you're so right. I think that taking time for self-care is not something that we grew up learning, and it's not something that was modeled to us, right? By like the women in our lives. I think like I have a great relationship with my mom, and she has grown and evolved too, like in her older age. But we have a lot of conversations about how that being self-sacrificing as a woman was like and still is in a lot of ways something that people applaud, right? It's like, oh, this woman, she's so selfless, right? She does everything for her kids. She does everything for like everyone else. And she doesn't complain about it. Like those are like the women that we essentially are looking up to a lot of times in our society. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think there are a lot of like nurturing qualities about women, right? That like make us natural caregivers and people that do tend to the needs of others and like the emotions of others, right? Um, and I find that it's certainly very, very prevalent in the medical field too. That's kind of the culture that's you're indoctrinated into is like if you are a good doctor, you also are supposed to sacrifice yourself for the patients at all costs. So, like, we talk to our patients about, sleep and how important exercise and sleep and nutrition are, and like social connection and hobbies, and then go through medical school and medical training. And it's like, you don't sleep, you don't have time to sleep, you don't have time to like do any of that stuff or take care of yourself. And I also think not just that, not just like the conditions, but also the belief that is very prevalent is like you need to be in the hospital all the time or in clinic all the time, and if you're not there, you need to be, you know, messaging your patients back or researching or bettering yourself in some way toward this profession. And so like I didn't take care of myself very well at all during a lot of those years medical school or training. When I found that I was actually the most important, interestingly, and maybe kind of like paradoxically was when our first child came into our home, right? It was a foster baby. And I was like, all of a sudden there was this huge another additional responsibility in our lives. And I was like, oh no, like I don't know how I'm going to do this. And for a while, I kind of floundered and tried to just like add more. And then it was like I had this like epiphany that with a lot of help and support that like I needed that time. I needed little pockets of time to be able to replenish myself like even a little bit. And if I didn't have that, it was like I was gonna not be able to make it, right? It was gonna suffer in pretty large ways in work or as a parent. And so I think I did like start to learn that a little bit in early like in residency when I became a parent, and then it's just kind of evolved right as I've added more children, more things, more stuff like that are all really important to me and important aspects of my life. It's like become even more integral to be able to say like I'm pretty fiercely protective of my like personal time and the things that I need. I look at them more as like needs now, because I know myself pretty well, and I know that I am my best self when I have these things in place. And I know that I am more able to be present and or more able to be connected to, my patients and my kids and my spouse and everything like that when I have those self-care practices like dialed in. And I'm not like in any way like a perfectionist about it or anything. And it definitely like what looks like self-care in one season may change in different seasons, right? Um, so it's not like set it and forget it. But it is super, super important. And I think that's what I coach all of my clients on as well, is just like it's non-negotiable to take care of yourself. And that can look a bazillion different ways. But it truly is to be able to live your best life is to, know yourself, know what you're passionate about, know even just the things that make you feel good, like make you feel more like yourself. And all of that can be framed and received as self-care.
Wow. Now, there was something that you said that I always love saying this as well, and I always tell my clients is what is your non-negotiables?
Mhm.
And that is what, as soon as you said it, it was like the light goes on for me because I love
Mhm.
hearing other women say there are non-negotiables because that is something as when we first started this part of this conversation is we didn't know about non-negotiables.
Mhm.
Didn't know that there were such things as non-negotiables. Now, probably in your mom's day, like even my mom's day, that was probably in a boardroom. Well, it's
Mhm.
non-negotiable, but not in our own life. And
Mhm.
to hear you talk about non-negotiables when it comes to self-care, that's what I think women and men, I'm not just being exclusive to women, but I think we all need to have that at some part in our life where there are things that are non-negotiable and carving out time for ourselves. And like I said, not just women, because some men need to
Mhm.
learn to carve out,
Mhm.
time for themselves as well,
Yeah.
that it's non-negotiable um, to have that time because not having it for yourself does take away from all the
Mhm.
hats that you wear because you wear many hats.
Mhm.
So, can you describe like what and I like you said, it changes through season because I know mine change and I'm going through a different season right now when it comes to what self-care is looking like for me. But what because a lot of people don't understand what that self-care means.
Mhm.
Some women say, "Oh, I go get a massage every month for an hour."
Mhm.
To me, that can be part of your self-care, but that doesn't necessarily mean, "Oh, wow, you've achieved self-care for the day."
Mhm.
What would a day or what is your self-care? What is something you do routine that you could share with our
Yeah.
listeners?
Yeah. So I've had to be creative, right, in some of the ways that I do to care for myself because what I would like my ideal at times would be to have like an hour or 2 hours time or an afternoon or something. And sometimes I get that, but it's not like the norm. And so I've learned ways to still get what I need to replenish myself, right? And still in the midst of like a pretty full schedule and pretty busy days. So, some things for me that are like pretty consistent practices that I do are like, say in the morning, even if it's 5 minutes, I really like to do some kind of like check in with myself, kind of like where I'm at emotionally, how I'm feeling physically, where I have tension. I'll do a couple little stretches, right? I might write a couple lines in a journal of like what I'm thinking about, what's on my mind, how I'm feeling. And it truly is a lot of times like 5 or 10 minutes, but it's just like a morning check in to kind of set the tone of my day. Those are a good time to like reflect or kind of set an intention for the day. Um, kind of how I want, like the qualities I want to embody or kind of what I want to focus on for the day. If I have a little time, the kids are maybe still sleeping, I will. I also really love to read. So might just read like a chapter of a book that I'm enjoying, something like that I love doing. And I love incorporating books where I can. And I'm like a dorky reader. I love reading. So I will like have something on my Kindle or have it in my work bag. And if I have like 10 minutes here or there, like I always will like have it to break out and read. And I get through a lot of books that way. Um, I also would say like during my workday, I try to get outside at least once. And instead of, I used to like, eat lunch at my desk and be doing my notes and typing and all that. And I try really, really hard to get some fresh air, eat away from a desk, and just use that time to kind of like, again, check in with myself, not do work while I'm eating. And sometimes that also involves like I grab a coworker and I'm like, let's go get some fresh air. And we just like, it's like a way for me to like socialize and get outside and, get away from work for a little bit. Um, and then I would say, if I have a little bit more time, things I love doing are again like yoga, going to yoga class, or just doing yoga, like a practice with myself at home. And then I think the other like huge things we don't often think of as self-care, but really can be depending on our like intention behind it and also like how mindful we're being of them are things like sleep is a form of self-care, so like prioritizing your sleep, saying again kind of like what is the minimum, that's what I do anyway, it's like I optimize, so I'm like what's the minimum amount of time that I need to sleep in order to feel pretty good, and I've like experimented to try to find like a sweet spot for myself, but it's like if I'm getting about 7 to 7.5 hours of sleep I feel really good. So it's like knowing that and saying like prioritizing bedtime and um helping, just even the way that you nourish yourself with food and that you move your body. Like those are all things that you can care for yourself about. It just kind of depends on um what you need and what you enjoy. So if you love running, if you love weight classes, if you love Pilates class, if you love just dancing at home while you do the chores, like all of that stuff is self-care. I just think it involves you. It's more meaningful if you kind of know yourself and get to know yourself a little bit more and see like, how can I do the things I'm already doing and need to do and like make them ways that I can also care for myself in the process.
Wow. And that's a good point that you make is it only has to be 5 to 10 minutes to
Mm-hmm.
set the tone for your day.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the practices I also talk with my clients about is what can you do for 5 minutes that can just, if it's you wake up, bring yourself joy. If it's, getting in the shower, washing off negativity, you know, washing it off and then lathering up with positivity, like how do I want this day to be?
Mm-hmm.
And that is very important to hear you say it only takes 5 to 10 minutes because a lot of people think when they talk about meditate, oh, I can meditate up to a half an hour, or I, carve out these hours
Mm-hmm.
of my day for it. But then you brought up another key point, that's sleep. Sleep, and I'm there with you. My regimen is sleep. If
Mm-hmm.
I can get a good amount of sleep, that I think is the biggest self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And how considering, well, we're going to talk about this, but I'm going to give you the question before we go to a break because it's time for our second break. But as y'all know, I am Sandee Byrd. I'm the host here on Emotional Elevator on Inspired Choices Network. I am the privilege of interviewing Dr. Sarah Witry. She's the Vibrant Human is her podcast. You can reach out to her. The Vibrant Human, is it drsarahwitry.com?
Just Sarah Witry. Vibrant
Or
Humans, Sarah Witry.
Witry.com.
Yep.
On Instagram, Sarah Witry, and you can look her up on LinkedIn. That's how we connected. But here's the question. And when we come back from this break, she's going to answer it. And did I really just lose the question I was going to ask? This is what live TV is all about. Normally I would write it down. But my question is, and then we're going to go to the break. How do you shut down your brain, considering all you have going on, in order to get that sleep? But we're going to go on a break. I'm going to let her take these few moments to fester on that because that is one of the biggest challenges. And I have practices I use with my clients, but I would love to know what maybe you might teach your clients on how do you quiet all that noise in the brain to get that 7 to 7.5 hours sleep. But gotta hold you in suspense because we're gonna go on that break. And thank you for joining me tonight on Emotional Elevator. I am Sandee Byrd, and you're listening to me or watching me on Inspired Choices Network.
Are you living a life of psychological trauma or suffering from an addiction? Are you ready to learn new techniques to elevate your emotions without sustaining or obtaining them from substances that are not good for your mind or body? Then continue to tune into Emotional Elevator with trauma, addiction, life, and spiritual coach, Sandee Byrd, where you will learn techniques to elevate your emotions that don't require a magic pill, food, or impulsive behavior. Listen to Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd, Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific, on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is Emotional Elevator with Sandee Byrd. To participate in this program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. You can also send an email to Sandee@emotionalelevator.com. Now, back to the program.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Of course, I am Sandee Byrd, but I'm not the big deal tonight. I always am, but tonight I'm not. Tonight, I have the amazing privilege to be interviewing Dr. Sarah Witry, who is the vibrant human. She is a doctor, she's a wife, she's a mother of four, and she also works with other professional women on getting down to those core values, taking care of themselves, putting themselves first. But I asked her a question before the break, and that question was, how, with all that you've got going on, you're a mom, a wife, a doctor, a coach, how do you get those 7 to 7.5 hours of sleep? Is there tools that you teach other people on how to quiet that mind down so you can get that good REM sleep?
For sure. So I think what works well for me and a lot of people that I work with, in their own kind of unique recipe, unique flavor, right, is having like developing some type of ritual for yourself, right? And essentially it's like a way that you are letting your brain know and your body like it's time to start winding down. So I think for me, I often, it sounds kind of crazy, but I have like kind of have a cutoff with myself, like a time or an alarm or something that is a notification to me, like, hey, it's time, right? Because otherwise I would just keep doing stuff, I think. Um, and yeah, it's something that I've definitely had to practice and learn, but it's like essentially the things that I like to do are something like, again, a way I think to tap into like the senses for me. So like I like lighting a candle or incense and just like that's a way to kind of like start that nightly kind of wind down. And then I like to do like a little bit of stretching. It helps me kind of get out some of like anxiety or tension or anything that I've been carrying. I'll do a little yoga or a little stretching literally for like a couple minutes. If I sometimes, if there's a lot going on in my mind or I'm like worried about the next day, I will like look ahead at the calendar or look like my, biggest priorities or things I've got going on the next day. Maybe jot a couple notes or reminders for myself, like just to get like the brain stuff out, right? Because otherwise it's just going to keep like rolling around in there, keeping you anxious. Um, and so I do that. And then the practice I probably do the most before bed is I like get into bed and have my like fiction book. So not anything that's going to make me like think more. So no like self-development books, anything like that at night, but really just something that's like lighthearted. I can read for even a few minutes or 15 minutes or whatever it is, whatever I have time for, right? I will read. And that kind of again like helps my brain know like it's close, you're getting ready for bed, you're getting sleepy. And then I personally really like and I've just been doing it for a long time. I do so I use the app called Insight Timer and I listen to like guided meditations for sleep or yoga nidra, which is another kind of practice that is essentially helping your mind kind of be at ease and your body be at ease and slip into like that relaxation mode and then deep sleep. And it must work pretty well for me because I like never make it to the end of them. I'm always sleeping. It's over. So that helps me, listen. And I put on like a sleep mask and I have the ones that have like the audio in the sleep mask. And so I listen and it's really close and it's lovely.
Wow. So you have many tips, and that's good. And anyone who's listening, I can say I've mentioned those tips as well. And the biggest one that I do like that you said, and that I do practice besides all the other things, listening to meditation, not getting into a thriller show right before you go to bed and wonder why you can't get to sleep because you
Right.
just watched something thrilling. Um, but it's also checking in. What is it I need to write down for the next
Mm-hmm.
day? And I think that is an important tool moving forward because I know not just you, almost all of us women, we do have a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us sit there and try to plan dinner for the week. Hello, I'm one of those people.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts ramping on you. Oh, I got to get this from the store tomorrow. I have also learned, and I used to do this by the bed, but I don't have to do it anymore, where I would have a piece of paper. And if I ever woke up during the night,
Mm-hmm.
I would write down, okay, what is it that's taking my mind? Okay, I can revisit this tomorrow. Now I can go back to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's realizing that that time for yourself is so valuable that, okay, what is it I need to think about for tomorrow? Okay, let me look on my calendar. Let me put it out there. If I have to write it down, I got to write it down, but releasing it from kind of like your brain in that moment. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that you said that because that is one thing I learned many years ago, and it is a great practice. And then all these other tools, just to take that time to diffuse. A lot of people think you're supposed to just jump in bed and I'm going to go to sleep. For some people, that does work. But for a lot of busy professional mothers, we have so much going on that we're thinking about and appointments. And
Mm-hmm.
because we do like that control of things
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, to make
Mm-hmm.
sure the kids get to all their appointments or, oh my gosh, they gotta, if they're play sports and all these things, it's realizing that sometimes just jumping into bed, you've got to take steps to kind of ground yourself and go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm so glad you kind of touched on that topic because that is a topic that I hear all the time that, and it's not just women. I know a lot of men that
Absolutely.
struggle with
Yeah.
sleeping.
Yeah.
So this is not just about women, but of course we are talking women, but it is all about figuring out ways to kind of quiet yourself down. And that is part of self care.
Mm-hmm.
Self care is sometimes quieting the mind so that you can intentionally focus on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And
Definitely.
what everything you've talked about is definitely things to think about because when you are, and what connects me to you a lot too is what type of doctor you are because I know that right there in and of itself has got to be both rewarding
Mm-hmm.
and challenging.
Definitely.
So tell tell me a little bit more about how you even I guess emotionally elevate yourself being in situations, if you don't understand palliative care and hospice, that is basically almost being like in the final stages
Mhm.
of life. And that in and of itself alone can be a challenge for
Mhm.
anyone.
Mhm.
So tell me how, because this is the emotional elevator, how you also emotionally detach from that when you also go home to a loving husband family
Mhm.
without having seen something like that. Did that make sense?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, like, how do you kinda separate them
Yes.
because it is so emotionally involved, like, I have to be pretty emotionally invested. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think again, like a huge area is like boundaries for myself, like psychological boundaries, right? And having some type of like I use my drive home as kind of that time to like help me transition. And I think that's really important. Like that's a lot of women I work with. And I don't think I don't think it's unique to medicine. It's like kind of turning it off, right? Or saying, okay, that part of my day, that part of my life is gonna come back tomorrow. So it's like you're, kind of imagine yourself like put it in a box, put it on the shelf, it'll be there for you tomorrow, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I know that not everyone has that luxury, like that they have, some people have to do work at home and kind of bleeds into their home life and all that. And so, but having those even like time boundaries for yourself, I think is helpful because we know that even if we are not physically like doing the work, we can be thinking about those interactions. We can be kind of trying to still process those things. Um, so I would say that, yeah, definitely having like a transition time for yourself and making that intentional, like whatever time that is, between work and then going to home and kind of putting those hats on is really important. I also am thankful that like a lot of my colleagues are pretty emotionally intelligent. And we are all kind of doing this work together, like holding space for the patients and their families who are like in facing their own mortality and just kind of emotionally processing with them and guiding them like into, these conversations and these um what to expect and kind of how to process and how to face it and all of that. So there's like a lot of really deep stuff. And I am grateful though to have amazing colleagues that we have developed such good relationships and also like a practice together of like debriefing with one another and talking about difficult cases that are weighing especially heavy on our hearts and being able to verbally process with them, I think has been huge for me and for them. I think it's something that we all really value with each other, because we know that like our spouses care, but also like it's a lot to unload on them, right? To say like I had all these conversations today and these really deep things, and then like how are you? And are we having spaghetti for dinner? Like it's a lot. And so I have learned that, like needing to rely on those other people in my work as ways to like really be powerful outlets to one another, to help each other to kind of process through and get the support we need. Then I would say like again the self-care, right? Like it comes back again, but it truly is like needing to have that because it helps to make it so I'm not, apathetic or kind of withdrawn or kind of disconnected. Um, and I can keep showing up for my patients. And then I know that if I am feeling any of those things, like, or I'm, a few days stretch where I'm kind of just like, oh, it feels like a drag. Like I know I need to dial something. And it's like my cue of like, I need more rest time. I need more connection time that's fun and light and free and, joyful or creative outlet or something like that. Because yeah, it's a good way for me to kind of recognize, when I am maybe overloaded or taking on too many things at one time. If I'm finding myself having trouble, like being present and being kind of emotionally available for patients and families. I don't know if that made sense.
It did make sense. I completely understand what you're saying. You, but so here's another second part to this.
Mhm.
When you go home after having already an emotional day,
Mhm.
so first I'll ask this, what are the ages of the 4 children?
Yeah, so they are 12, 8, 6, and 2.5.
So you get a wide range of emotions
Yes.
at home.
Yes. Yes.
Um, boys, girls, what are they? What are they? I mean, what
Yeah, like their genders. Our oldest is a girl, and then we have two boys in the middle, and the youngest is a girl as well.
okay. So you get the definitely that emotional elevator at home.
Hmm.
And how do you regulate
Hmm.
your emotions so that your emotions from the day stay the day and the emotions at home? Do you understand what I'm saying? Without them like intertwining
Hmm.
and you breaking down.
Hmm. Hmm.
Does
Hmm. Yeah. I think it's a lot of it is learning, like staying connected to myself, staying in a relationship with myself. Um, and that I'll try to explain what I mean. It's basically like knowing what I'm feeling and experiencing and allowing myself to have that emotion. And if I need to process it, I need to like move it through my body, some practice or regulating way that I can help myself to return to like a place where I'm available for more connection is really key. Because if I don't do that, if I don't have that awareness and something is really, really heavy, um, or really, really stressful from the day. And then I try to go and like talk to the kids about their day and start doing all kind of like the things we do as moms, like help with homework and get dinner and all these things. I'm much more likely to be reactive, irritable with them, right? Kind of take
Mhm.
those stress or that emotion out on them if I'm not aware of kind of what's going on inside of me. Like, what am I feeling? What am I experiencing? What are those physical sensations that I'm having in my body? That I know for myself because they're like patterns that come up, right? So it's like when I'm feeling like really a lot of sadness. I feel it in my chest when I'm feeling a lot of like stress and tension and frustration. Like I'll have like neck and shoulder pain. Like it's like getting to know myself on that level and being able to know in real time, like what am I feeling and what do I need based on what I'm feeling is what helps me to be able to navigate, the what you call it, like emotional elevator of like other people's emotions that I'm in contact with.
Yep. Well, it is. We are running out of time, unfortunately. We have like a minute and a half left, but I want people to know how can they again reach out to you if you are a professional woman and wants to reach out to Sarah. I would love for them to have your information. So we're going to go
Mhm.
through that again before we end up running out of time because I want people to know that you are someone who is professional and is a mom and has the responsibilities of everyday life. And you're definitely someone that would be a great maybe fit for someone who's in the professional industry and is looking for someone that can really talk to.
Mhm.
So give away every way that they can get in contact with you.
Sure. So my website is www.vibranthumans.com. It's all one word together. That is my website. And then you can listen to my podcast, which is called Vibrant Humans. It's available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And you can find me on social media. I'm most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. You can just.
Whoops.
Okay.
They ran out of time.
That's okay.
Thank you for listening to the Emotional Elevator Show. Sandee returns Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then, start elevating your emotions and stop riding the emotional elevator that is stopping you from living the life you deserve.